Stars don't usually disappear. They fade through age, injury, or the league moving on. But Auston Matthews is still here, captain, $13 million a year. And yet, when it matters most, the most dangerous scorer in hockey keeps vanishing.
I think we did, but at the end of the day, I mean, we didn't, and that's the frustrating part, I think.
How can a superstar be everywhere and absent at the same time?
Side of the Winnipeg gate, in front, scores! Auston Matthews!
Toronto drafted Auston Matthews first overall in 2016 to fix a failing franchise. He didn't wait to get started. In his debut against Ottawa, he scored 4 goals before the third period even began. No rookie in the modern era had ever done that.
Take it, move forward, and focus on the next one. There's not every night you're not going to score 4 goals, so this happened to be a great night.
By the end of his first season, he had 40 goals and the Calder Trophy. He wasn't just a prospect, he was already the best player on the team. The next few years were a blur of records and massive contracts. In 2019, he signed a deal worth over $58 million and hit 100 career goals just 9 days later.
They want a team, a championship team, and we want to give it to them. This city deserves it. So
even when the pandemic shortened the 2021 season, he still managed to lead the league with 41 goals in only 52 games. He made scoring look like a routine. 2022 was the year he became a legend in Toronto. He scored twice against Detroit to hit the 60-goal mark, becoming the first player in franchise history to reach it. That season earned him the Hart Trophy as league MVP. Toronto responded by making him the highest-paid player in the NHL with a $53 million contract extension. He paid them back immediately. In the 2023-24 season, he put up 69 goals, the highest total the league had seen in nearly 30 years. By April 15, 2025, he joined the 400-goal club in a blowout win against Buffalo. But the real shift happened on January 3, 2026. That night, in a game against the Islanders, Matthews scored twice to reach 421 career goals. He officially passed Matt Sundin to become the greatest goal scorer in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he did it in 317 fewer games than the man he replaced. For nearly a decade, Matthews was a machine that didn't know how to stop. This wasn't a star in development, he was the finished product. The regular season is where Matthews builds his resume. The playoffs are where that resume falls apart. It started early. In 2017, Toronto faced Washington. Matthews scored in Game 6, but the Leafs lost 2-1 and were eliminated. It felt forgivable. He was young. The team wasn't ready. A year later, they ran into Boston. 7 games. When the series tightened, Matthews went silent. No goals, no points in Games 5, 6, or 7. Toronto collapsed in Game 7. The excuses started. 2019 brought the same opponent and the same ending. Another 7-game series. Another Game 7 loss. Matthews finished the deciding game -1 without a goal. By now, the pattern was visible, even if no one wanted to say it out loud. Then came the bubble. In 2020, with the season on the line against Columbus, Toronto was shut out in a winner-take-all game. Their most dangerous scorer never even found the net. When the moment arrived, the offense disappeared. 2021 was the most painful year for the fans. Toronto led Montreal 3-1. They needed 1 win. Matthews scored once in the entire series. 0 goals in Games 5, 6, and 7. The Leafs were eliminated again, and this time, the silence around their star was deafening. Toronto finally broke through in 2023, beating Tampa Bay in 6 games. Matthews scored in Game 4 and opened the scoring in Game 6. It was the first playoff round win of his career. But when the second round arrived, so did the old ending. Against Florida, Matthews went 5 games without a goal. The Leafs were eliminated quickly. By 2025, the script was familiar. Another series against Boston. Matthews didn't score through the first 5 games and finished with 1 goal in Game 7. Toronto was eliminated again. By then, the numbers were impossible to ignore. And in Toronto, when the same ending keeps repeating, the question always shifts from what's happening to why. The dominance of Auston Matthews was built on a wrist shot that changed the game, but by 2021, that weapon no longer looked the same. It wasn't a sudden snap. It was a slow leak. In August 2021, the team finally admitted there was a problem and sent him for surgery on his left wrist. He was back on the ice by October, but he didn't look right. He went through his first few games back without finding the net once. For a guy who usually scores as easily as he breathes, it was the first sign that something had changed. By February of that same season, undisclosed labels started taking over the injury report. The team called it a hand injury, but they wouldn't say which hand or how deep the damage went. You didn't need the medical notes to see the results. His shot volume dipped. He stopped pulling the trigger as often as he used to. The player who once fired from everywhere was suddenly hesitating, looking for passes instead of taking the lane. In early 2023, the body gave out again. A knee injury cost him several weeks, and when he returned, his speed no longer separated him the way it once did. The explosive skating that defined his early years had plateaued. He was supposed to be getting faster in his prime, but instead he was just holding steady. He looked like he was skating through sand just to keep up with the play. In the 2024 playoffs against Boston, Matthews played the first 4 games but was pulled from Game 4 with what the team called an illness, and then missed Games 5 and 6 as doctors monitored lingering symptoms that were never fully explained before he returned for Game 7. In November 2024, Matthews took a secret flight to Munich, Germany to see a specialist he trusted. You don't fly across an ocean in the middle of a season unless you're desperate for answers. He stayed in the lineup for most of the following year, but the rocket version of Matthews became harder to find. The lower body issues became a cycle of missing time and rushing back. By the end of 2025, he was being placed on injured reserve almost every other month. He returned on New Year's Day 2026 and scored a hat trick, but the underlying numbers told a different story. His high-power shots declined. The heavy snipes that used to beat goalies clean were losing their bite. By the start of 2026, his shooting power had dropped significantly. He's still playing, but he's playing in a different gear. The physical aggression is gone. The puck battles are shorter. He's no longer seeking contact the way he once did. Even as questions about his health followed him, the expectations around Auston Matthews never changed. In Toronto, availability doesn't lower the standard. Leadership raises it. On August 14th, 2024, the power dynamic in Toronto shifted. John Tavares stepped aside and Auston Matthews was handed the captaincy. The history of this team is filled with captains who were forces of nature. You had Wendell Clark, who would fight anyone to protect the lead. You had Matt Sundin, who was a quiet mountain of consistency. Matthews didn't fit either mold. By November 2024, the cracks in this new leadership were showing. After a blowout loss, the media asked him why the team looked flat, and Matthews gave a 30-second answer before walking away. He isn't the guy to scream in the locker room or demand more from his teammates. On the bench, while others are slamming doors to stay in the game, Matthews usually looks like he's waiting for a bus. He sits in a trance, leans back, and stares at the rafters with a look of total indifference. There is no fire or anger, just a blank stare that makes a hockey-mad city feel like their captain has already mentally left the building. During the Four Nations face-off in early 2025, he wore the C for Team USA. He looked like a different person. He had a swagger and a vocal presence that seemed to vanish the moment he put the leaf back on his chest. When he returned to Toronto for the playoff push in March, the quiet version of Matthews returned with him. In the second round of the 2025 playoffs against Florida, the Leafs needed a captain to lead the fight. Instead, they were bullied. They were outworked. By December 2025, the conversation in Toronto wasn't about his goals anymore. It was about his soul. Younger players like Matthew Nyes were the ones showing the emotion that fans craved. Matthews didn't change. It isn't just that he's quiet, it's that he sounds bored. In post-game interviews, he delivers the same flat, monotone lines with a don't care shrug. When the city looks for a leader to take accountability, Matthews looks like a guy checking his watch waiting for the interrogation to end. In Toronto, if you aren't showing the fans you're bleeding, they assume you're already checked out. The city didn't need another scorer, they needed a presence. And Matthews was being asked to be something he had never been in his entire life. By that point, the issue wasn't effort or talent, it was presence. And the growing sense that when pressure peaked, Matthews no longer shaped the moment. By the start of the 2025-26 season, the conversation around Auston Matthews changed from how many to what happened. He was still in the lineup, but the player who used to take over the ice had vanished. This shift to the outside doesn't just look like a tactical change, it looks like a lack of interest. He's stopped finishing checks and stopped fighting for space. On most nights, his body language screams day shift. He glides through lanes instead of cutting through them, looking less like a superstar and more like a veteran just trying to get through 60 minutes without getting hurt. By the end of 2025, that number had cratered. He's settling for long-distance wrist shots that goalies can see coming. He scored only 1 goal from the dirty areas during the entire first half of the 2024-25 season. For a guy paid $13 million to be a sniper, that is a total lack of production. The media is still looking to Matthews for answers. In Toronto, his name is still on the marquee, but the headlines now share space with the grid of younger players and emerging talents around him. The NHL moves fast, and it doesn't wait for anyone to find their game. While Matthews was dealing with mystery injuries and a quiet captaincy, the league moved on. New faces have taken over the playoff narratives. You see players like Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon dragging their teams into the deep rounds of the postseason every year. Even younger stars like Connor Bedard are now the ones leading the highlight reels every night. The league has moved on to players who play with their hearts on their sleeves. When you watch other stars lose, you see the agony. When Matthews loses, you see a blank face and a quick exit to the locker room. People aren't just questioning his stats anymore. They're questioning his hunger. They see a guy with the records and the $53 million bag who looks like he's lost the will to compete for anything else. The final question is simple. Did Auston Matthews actually fall off, or did the world just stop waiting for him to become a legend? He has the records. He has the money. He has the C on his jersey. But the one thing he doesn't have is a signature moment when the season was on the line. He's played 10 seasons in the toughest hockey market on earth, and his legacy is a pile of regular season stats and a string of early exits in the spring. As the 2026 season continues, the hockey world is looking toward the Olympics and the next generation of stars. Matthews will be there, and he will likely score more goals, but the feeling that he's an unstoppable force is gone. Matthews is no longer the player who changed the game in 2016. He's a high-priced veteran who's part of the system, rather than the engine driving it. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Stick around if you prefer the truth over the highlight reel. Otherwise, I'm just out here doing research like some beauty who can't remember anything without writing it down first. Embarrassing. Figure it out.